Okay, we are in the second half or towards the end of Hebrews chapter 10, 19 to 39. We started a little bit last week talking about the community of worship and the importance of gathering together and the communal gathering of faith that helps us draw from each other's faith, helps us draw from each other's experiences, helps us draw each other closer to what God would have us to do and be, and just helps in time of need. I constantly wonder how people that don't have a church family, how they get through the things that we get through as we lift each other up through the times and the trials that we have just as being part of humankind. And we have this fallback, we have this safety net of family, of friends and family that love us and know us and can support us. And people without that, I don't know how they make it. And it can't be an easy thing. So, in Hebrews 10 and 19 through 25, it's one of the best known texts of Hebrews, I think. And it's one that we use. We use it. Don't forsake the assembling. You can put a pre in front of that any way you want. We do tend to misuse it. But I'd like to focus on the fact that it's something that God found for us that's important. We talk a lot about being parents and talk a lot about being kids and our past experiences and how we grow up to realize that those rules that our parents put in place for us, those were actually important. There was a reason, you didn't play with the stove. There's a reason you didn't run with scissors. There's a reason for all those things that we didn't know when we were a child. There's a reason for the things we do as children of God that we don't necessarily know the reason as we start out as a babe in Christ. You don't come out of the water of baptism with all the knowledge that you need, with all the experience that you need, with all the information that you need. You just don't. That's why it's quoted so many times in Scripture that you're a babe and you're learning and you're growing, and you continue to do that. You grow in your faith. You grow in all of the things that Christ would have us to do and God would have us to be. It's a growing process. And so I think the important part of don't forsake the assembling is not necessarily the forsaking part. I think it's the assembling part. And I talked a little bit about that already. It's important for us to assemble with those of like mind, to lift each other up, and we'll talk about that. It calls for communal worship in the divine presence in the context of a life dedicated to God. Okay? We gather together, but we gather together for God. We gather together to commune with God. And so God knows that's important. We gather together in confidence. We gather together to enter the most holy place. And we talked about that a little bit last week, just at the very end, that we are now allowed, welcomed into the presence of God. And that's what we do here. Can we be in the presence of God alone? Absolutely. It's hard to be strengthened in the presence of God alone. We strengthen ourselves, obviously, through the things that we think, things we learn, and things we strengthen ourselves. But it's much more important, and we can see it's much more important to God that we worship in a communal setting. It's important for us to be together. It's important for us to lift each other up. And we opened this new way, or God opened this new way for us to come through His presence, and He opened that through Christ and through the blood of Christ. And that's how believers enter. He opened the curtain that separated us from God. And we all know about how the temple worked, and how certain times of year, one time a year, that one person in all of mankind was welcomed into the presence of God. And now, as believers, washed in the blood of Christ, through that blood sacrifice, we are welcomed as individuals and as a people into the presence of God. And we can't forget about that. There's a lot of times we forget about the joys that God has presented to us because we're just a forgetful people. We get in a rut. We have different focuses. We all have different focuses. Some of us get to focus on grandchildren. I don't have that focus. Okay? It's just not yet. I'm looking to the future focus of grandkids. Okay? So I don't have that focus. Some of us focus on our jobs. Some of us are lucky enough we don't have to focus on that. And I'm jealous. And I'll say that in front of everybody. I'm jealous. I'm looking forward to that point in my life too, that I don't have to focus on work. Okay? Some of us focus from a different place in our lives. Okay? We focus from a point of pain, from a point of loss, from a point of fear, from a point of anxiety, or any of those things about as far as where we are in our life, where we are in our jobs, our families, our addictions, our any of those things. And if we're worried about how the world is going, we focus on our growth from a different perspective. And that's another one of those things that I know God sees in us as He brings us together, that we can share those focuses. Okay? And so, as we draw near to God, we're told to draw near. The word is actually the coming of a worshiper. Okay, the call of the worshiper to draw near. It's the coming of the worshiper. It means to come before God. We come into the presence of God through Jesus, and we draw near. We draw near in the presence as a worshiper. Okay, and at different points in your life, and we're talking about communal worship. At different points in your life, there was different reasons for you to be at church. Okay, when you were an infant, you were there because you got carried there. Okay, when you were a toddler, you got because you had to go because your parents made you come, and there was games, and there was fun, and there was friends, and there was there was that atmosphere for you. Okay, as you became adolescent or a teenager, you didn't want to come for the most part. You had friends there, but your folks and your grandparents still made you go. Now, as a young adult, college student, depending on your level of interaction with the church, would depend on your level of attendance with the church, I think. And so the less active you were growing up, I think the less active you'll be during that time of your life, college age, a little after college age, that age. Okay, so it's still coming from a different perspective. Okay, then as you become an adult or a parent, and you grow and you realize and you have the epiphany that, God is good. Then it's not, I have to go to church this morning. Okay? It's, I get to go to church. I get blessed with the opportunity and the willingness and the ability to gather with my family, to gather before God and worship His name as His child. Okay? It's a blessing. It's a gift that you get to go to church. Okay? And there's just that growth. And we talked about how we get to that growth. Some of it will come through fear. Okay? You might have some sort of a medical scare. Okay? That'll bring you back to church. Okay? Especially if you have some kind of support here at the church, which we're supposed to have because that's why we're here. And so that'll bring you back. If you have some kind of traumatic experience in your life, a near-death experience or a loss of a loved one or something like that, that'll bring you back. Okay. After 9/11, church buildings were full. Okay. There's this traumatic life events as a nation. Okay. Will bring you back to church. Okay. What we're talking about in Hebrews, as far as the communal worship and the forsaking of that assembly, that's completely different. Okay? The world we live in has a different concept of what Christianity is. Okay? They have a different definition of what Christianity is, what it means to be a Christian, and what it means to act like a Christian. Okay? In the non-denominational world, the church buildings fill up on Christmas and Easter. Okay? Because that's when you're supposed to go. Okay? Because that's what they've been taught, and that's their habit. Okay? And so there's different perspectives of forsaking the assembly. Now, if I decided I didn't have to go to church anymore, there wasn't anything there for me. I didn't need to be there because nobody cared if I was there or not. I can, eat a cracker and drink some juice at home if I need to. And I may not necessarily need to do that. Okay? I can talk to God when I want to. I can beg from God when I need to. And in the end, I can go to heaven. Okay? That's a prevalent belief. And it's a prevalent belief that Hebrews warns against, okay, as far as the assembling together. Okay. I'll give you an analogy, just an analogy. Okay. If you're on a Super Bowl winning football team, okay, if you show up to practice and you never get to play, you just ride the bench, okay, you're not a star player, you're just a backup, and you never get to play. But your team goes to the Super Bowl and wins. Guess who gets a Super Bowl ring? Okay. Everybody that was part of the team. Now, if you decide that you're too good to practice, you don't even have to play. You're so good you don't even have to play. Matter of fact, you don't even have to be part of the team. I could be a Super Bowl quarterback. Just so everybody in here knows, I could be a Super Bowl quarterback. I don't have to practice. I don't have to show up for games. I don't even have to be paid to be on the team. But when the Super Bowl comes along and my team wins, do I get a Super Bowl ring? I don't get anything, do I? Just because I feel like I deserve a Super Bowl ring does not mean I get a Super Bowl ring. I wasn't part of the team, the community. I wasn't part of the work that got done. I wasn't on the roster and I didn't get paid. I shouldn't expect a Super Bowl ring. I shouldn't expect the reward at the end. Okay? And yet, humankind doesn't want to do the work. doesn't want to come to practice, doesn't want to be part of the team, doesn't want to play. But in the end, what do they want? They want that reward. Everybody wants the reward. And we as partakers of the reward still root for the people that aren't on the team. Okay, that's the difference. Okay? We as the team want everybody to win. Okay? That's our job. We especially want everybody here to win. Okay? And so, in order to draw near, experience the presence of God, we need each other. Okay? We need each other. Somebody somewhere along the way preach the gospel to you. Okay? Give you that gift. Okay? And so, when you got that gift, and you obeyed that gift, and you accepted that gift, you become part of the team. Okay? And now, a team means we're supposed to help each other. You know, the quarterback can't do it all by himself. If the quarterback doesn't have a center, he's not going to get the ball. If he doesn't have a line, he's not going to keep the ball. He's not going to keep his health either. He'll be destroyed. We have to work together as a machine or a team or any analogy you want to use. And we as a community need to help when the pieces get broke to the puzzle to bring it back to operating efficiency. Okay? And so there's 4 things that the lesson talks about being able to draw near or come before God or experience the divine presence as a worshiper. We've got to have a sincere heart. Okay? You're not going to fake your way to heaven. It's just not going to happen. Now, you can fake your way through service. You can fake your way through life. You can fake your way through your job. You can fake your way through your marriage or your education. You know, you can cheat your way through education. You're not going to fake your way to God. It's just not going to happen. It's just not possible for man to do that. Okay? So you have to have a sincere, true heart that's not divided as far as its allegiances go. Your focus has to be on God. Okay? You have to have or come before God in the full assurance of faith. And that's very difficult for humankind to do. Okay? To have a full assurance for faith. Okay? And I don't know that it's difficult for mankind to do, but it's easy for Satan to disrupt. Okay? It's easy for Satan to disrupt your faith. He's good at it. He practices every day. He doesn't sleep. It's constant. And he knows you well enough to use whatever it is that will make you stumble against you. And we sometimes forget about that. And when we forget about that and we let our guard down, that's when Satan is going to pounce. It's just, that's his nature. So we have to have hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, a purged conscience. And we talked about conscience several weeks back. It's important to keep a clean conscience and to forge your behavior in such a way as you don't have to worry about your conscience as much. Okay? You know the things that disrupt your work. You know the things that disrupt your walk with God. You know those things. I don't know those things. You know I know my things. I know my things that disrupt my walk with God. Okay? And you know your things. If we know them and we watch out for them, it's more difficult for the devil to get his hook into us. Okay? I'm not a fisherman, so that's not my thing. You don't have to worry about me not showing up for church because I'm fishing. It's just not my thing. And so people have that thing. There are things, you know. And so watch out for your thing is what I think the scriptures are telling us, to find and hold on to that assurance of faith. Okay? Don't be so easily distracted away from your faith based on what the world has going on with all its nonsense. Because there's lots of nonsense that's going on now in the world. There's always been nonsense going on in the world. We have it easy as far as our nonsense goes. Okay, the Hebrew writer was talking to people that had lost everything to become a Christian, had watched their friends murdered and burned, and all those things that we learn about, the horrendous things that happened to Christians, and they were joyous in that loss for their assurance of faith that they had in God. And so knowing that God will provide and will be true to his word. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, and bodies washed with pure water. And I think that alludes to baptism. We could study on that more, but I think that alludes to baptism. And it's an important part of coming to God. Okay? The only access we have to God is through the blood of Christ. The only contact that's through the scriptures, the only contact we have with the blood of Christ is through baptism. And that's where we're washed from our sins. And so if that's the only way, that's the only way. We can't cheat our way around. We can't fake it. That's the way. And so as our bodies are washed with pure water. So when we're talking about drawing near, we also have to talk about holding unswervingly to our hope. And that kind of comes along with that faith that we can't let get rocked because of circumstance that we live in each and every day. We can't let it rock our faith, and we can't let it rock our hope. We can't let it rock our hope. And as a church, as a gathering of Christians, as a family, we should consider how we may spur one another to love and good works. Okay? That's why we're here. We're here to help one another in all the things that we help each other with, but we should be pushing ourselves, each other, towards love and good works. Okay? That's it. That should be the whole thing. Success is important in the world that we live in. Okay? The definition of success is important in our walk with Christ. Okay? What's our ultimate success going to be? Enter in, good and faithful servant. That's the words. Okay? That's the goal we're looking for. Okay? That's where we're headed. And not only am I headed there, I'm taking you guys with me. Okay? And as many other people that I can get to tag along. Okay? And it's not going to be a tag along. I'm going to be behind like, you guys ever watch YouTube? I know some of the generations in here doesn't watch YouTube, but every once in a while on YouTube there'll be a video. There'll be one guy in the Orient somewhere, Chinese somewhere. He'll have 1 million ducks and a stick. Okay? 1 million ducks and a stick. And he can move this 1 million ducks from way over here to way over there with a stick and not lose any ducks. They just, it's just like they take up the whole road, and it's 1 million ducks is a lot of ducks. And you see this just river of ducks. And you see a guy with a stick. Okay? If I could get the world to go to Christ with a stick, man, I'd have a big stick, and we would just all go. And we'd get to where we needed to be. And we'd get there in the way we were supposed to get there. And we would all be there together for the same reason, in the same flock. Is it a flock of geese? gaggle of geese, ducks, I don't know. Anyhow, in the same group. We'd all be there in the same group because we could spur each other on to love and good works. And because God is faithful, and because God has acted in Jesus and through Jesus, we can hold on to our hope without wavering. Okay? We can hold on to that hope. We can help each other hold on to that hope. We can guide each other to hold on to that hope. Now, in order to do that, we have to pay attention to each other. Okay? You can't ignore me and help me. And I'm a Budinsky, so you can't ignore me anyway. You can't ignore me and help me. Okay? I can't ignore you and help you. Okay? So we have to pay attention to one another. We have to consider one another, which means I have to care. I have to care. I have to care that Robbie's doing good in college. Okay? Robbie doing good in college has no effect on my immediate life. Okay? Not at all. But me caring how well that Bobby does or Robbie does in college helps Robbie. Okay? In some little way. And so that's what we should be focused on. We should be focused on encouraging and considering and keeping our eyes fixed on one another. We shouldn't ignore one another. We should be partial. I think we should be partial one to another. You always, if you favor something, you're always more interested in something. You'll spend more money on it. You'll spend more time with it. You'll spend more energy and effort. And so that's what we should do when we consider one another. Now, as we get into the end of Hebrews 10, now towards the end, not the end of Hebrews 10, but the end of the section in 25, the thing I wanted us to, okay, God promised He would not forsake His people. Okay? So we in turn should promise not to forsake God. Okay? And that comes with assembling together. Okay? We grow stronger towards God as we assemble together. And so assembling is something that the saints should do more often than we do, but as often as possible, because we benefit from assembling together in the presence of God. Okay? We like to do stuff that gets us stuff. You don't want to do something for nothing. That's not the world we grow up in. You don't do something for nothing. Nothing's free, and all those things, all those little sayings and stuff like that. We should do something for nothing because it doesn't cost me anything to wonder how Robbie's doing in college. It doesn't cost me anything to see if Mike's health is better or worse. It doesn't cost me anything to flirt with your grandkids. It doesn't cost anything. But there's a benefit, okay? And when we go through our cost-benefit analysis for the church, okay, if it doesn't cost you anything and there's a huge benefit, that's the world we live in. Okay? That's what everybody's looking for. Okay? It doesn't cost you anything, but you get a huge benefit. Okay? We should do more often because assembling together in the presence of God, we find encouragement. Okay? And we all of us need at some point in our life encouragement. Okay? And it doesn't take much and it doesn't cost anything. Okay? It doesn't cost anything for you to just bite your tongue and tell Mike he did a good job. Okay? You don't even have to mean it. He knows. You don't have to. I mean, it's a little thing. It's a very, you You don't have to tuck a 50 in his pocket and tell him he did a good job. Just tell Mike he did a good job. Okay? It's a huge thing. Okay? Ask somebody that's not in your age group how they're doing. Okay? That's a huge thing. Okay? If somebody knows you care about them, okay, they're more likely to be here. Okay? And if they're here and somebody knows that they care about them, then they'll be here. Okay? And so we just have to care for one another. We have to love one another. And we'll all be here. And we'll all benefit from it. And it won't cost us anything. Okay? And those are the kind of things you learn as you grow up. Okay? And we don't have to bargain. I got a bargaining story from one of my kids, but we don't have to bargain and say, well, God, I'll go to church, but you're going to have to benefit me in some way, or I'm not going to go. Okay? When my youngest was, and this is even time for church because he was in his church clothes. Okay? When my youngest was 4, maybe 5, him and his mama was arguing, and that happened quite often. But I was, what's the problem? Well, my youngest was all dressed up in his church clothes. It wasn't time to go yet. He wanted to go down to the neighbors and play. He had a couple of buddies down the street, a couple houses down. He wanted to go play. And did his mama want him to go play? She didn't care anything about him playing. I mean, you don't keep your kids from playing. His mama didn't want him to get dirty. Okay? Now, can anyone in the room explain to a 4-year-old why he shouldn't get dirty? No, you just can't. That's just not going to happen. You can't explain it to him. So, I stepped in. Dad always has to step in. I don't know why. That doesn't hurt my feelings till you let them kids, I guess. I don't know why. But, so I took Brandon aside. I said, what's the problem? He said, I want to go down to Jesse's and play. I said, you have your church clothes on? Yes. Okay, now let me tell you. This is how it's going to work. This is where the bargaining came in. Okay. You can go to Jesse's. And you can play. But if you get dirty, if your clothes get dirty, and I don't care if it's an accident, I don't care if Jesse pushes you in the ditch, I don't care if a dog knocks you down, there is no reason you can give me for getting dirty that's going to keep you from getting the beating of your life. Okay? And this is a kid that had a whipping or two, so he knew what a whipping was. And it's not going to be any whipping. This is going to be the whipping that you remember for the rest of your life. Okay? Now, you can go down to Jesse's and play. If you get dirty, you know what's going to happen when you get home. This is the reward for you are going to get a whipping. And it's going to be the whipping. And that's how it's going to be. So he sat there a minute. You know how kids will look around and their mind is just a spinning. Okay. Off he went down Jesse's to play. Okay? Now, it was worth a whipping. And not just any whipping. It was worth the chance of a whipping to get to go play. For 15 minutes. I mean, it was nothing. It was not worth it to me. But I wasn't looking through it as an 4-year-old. I guess 15 minutes is a lifetime when you're playing with your buddies down the street. Okay? And so he was willing to bargain that away. And he came back and he was clean and we went to church and that's how the story ended. It was no big deal. But the fact that he was willing tells me that we as adults are willing. Okay? We know what the punishment is. We know what's going to be the most severe punishment we've ever had in the entirety of our life. And we're willing to bargain with that to do what we want to do. Okay? Now, that's the wonderful thing about how God created us. Our job is to move the things that we want to do. Okay? Now, either I want to go fishing or I want to come and be part of the gathering of the church on Sunday morning. That's what I want to do. Okay? And so the punishment becomes less and less likely as we lift each other's up and gather together and share and encourage and talk and visit and learn from one another, and we're all pushing each other towards God, the likeliness of punishment becomes less. And we like those odds. Our odds get better. The more we show up, the better odds we have. And we all like the better odds. Okay? And so, this is the thing that I marked. Okay? We draw near with faith to persevere with hope and encourage each other with love. Thus the community, that's us, hangs together and gains strength one from another for the journey, because we are on a journey. Okay? But the part we need to remember, just like Brandon knew for certain there was a whipping waiting for him when he got home if he was dirty, what we need to remember is judgment is certain. Okay? That is a fact that we cannot change, we cannot appeal, we cannot move, we cannot lessen, we cannot argue, we cannot get out of. There is no substitute for judgment. Okay? Now, we can either be judged good or bad, so the judgment is coming. So we can either look forward to the judgment, or we can look to the judgment in fear.
I think a lot of it is we put it off, and when they call hospice, we're going to get right with the Lord. We believe the last chapter of our life, we can make things right.
That's exactly right. We always think we have more time. We always think we have more time. And we know that the older we get, we know that we don't always have more time. What we do have is we always have less time. Okay? Every click of that clock, we always have less time. Okay? And so the judgment is certain. Now, if we persist in the trust that God is going to do what He says He's going to do, He's going to do for us, He's going to do with us, He's going to do to us if we don't go in the right direction, we can look back at what God has done in the past through the Scriptures. We can look through and see what God has done in the past. He's talking to a group of Christians that their past was horrid, and yet their faith brought them through. Their community brought them through, and their love one for another brought them to the point where the writer of Hebrews is talking to them now. Okay? Because there was more coming. But they could look back and see that they survived it. They made it. They became stronger because of it. God was still faithful. God's still there. God still blessed them. And so they could look forward to what God had planned for them in the future. Okay? It wasn't just a blind acceptance of this is how my life is going to be and God's going to be there at the end, but between here and there, I got to do whatever I can. Okay? God is with us the whole journey. Okay? And so we have a faith in God through Christ, but we also have this communal faith. Okay? Now Mike's faith may be stronger than mine at some points in his life, in my life. My faith may be stronger than Mike's at some point in faith. But we can look to each other, lift each other up, prod each other forward, and use our faults and experiences and our victories to just kind of go as that flock. We can't always be in the front, but we can always be in the flock. Okay? And so it's important for us as a church, as a community of believers, as a gathering, to remember it's just not, I don't just come here for me. I do come here for me. Absolutely. I'm selfish as I can be. I come here for what you guys do for me. Because it's important for me. Because I'm forgetful and I'm slow and I don't have a good I don't pay attention well. I get distracted. I'm very easily distracted. And so through the week, if I have this moment in time when I have my family around me that can be just the focus of prodding me on to good works, I'm here for that. Now, if somewhere along the way I happen to help somebody else, that's just gravy there. But if we can all come here for someone else, if we can all come here for unselfish reasons, I think that the church will grow and become stronger and stronger in faith as we prod each other along to that end. It's faith within a faith community. And God is faithful, and He will do what He promised. Okay? Whether we want Him to or not, okay? God will do what He promised. Okay? And I appreciate your attention.